Hi, Oregon Oracle here with Lightbody Studios. Um, just had a quick conversation on my other phone here with my cousin, and she's like, "Hey, when did you realize that you were gifted, or when did you realize that you had the ability to see and hear things?" And I'm like, "Oof," from a very very young age. I was 9 months old, and I learned to walk. I was a year old and I potty trained myself because I didn't like to be wet. And at about not quite 2 years old, I had my first telepathic experience. My mom and dad were, my dad was in the military and we were up in Michigan, and it was really, really cold. And it was, March, April time, somewhere like that. And the snow was super, super, super high. Like, wow, there's a lot of snow. Um, and so, everybody stayed in, and my mom and dad lived above a butcher. And my mom worked as a cashier sometimes for the butcher. And that's how we came to live where we were living. When my sister was born, she was sickly, and my mom and the baby needed lots of naps. Lots of naps. So they'd go take a nap, and I wasn't a napping kind of kid. I was like, I really don't want to take a nap. My mom's like, you can do whatever you want, just don't make any noise. You stay right here and you be quiet. Okay. So I'd wait for her to go to sleep, and then one day I heard a woman crying across the hall. I walked across the hall, pushed the door open, and said hello. And in the living room was this ginormous hospital bed. And there was this beautiful woman with long, long white hair. And she was crying. And I said, "Why are you crying?" And she says, "Oh, I wish somebody would brush my hair. I can't brush it myself and I need help." I said, "I'll help you." And I said, "Where's the brush?" She told me where it was in her bedroom and the drawer it was in. And these were these nice, like golden handled brushes with, boar's bristle, really fancy brushes, right? So I go and I get it, and I can't get up in the bed because it's too tall. And she tells me to push one of the chairs from the table over to the bed. And I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I'm pushing for all I'm worth, because the chair's is bigger than I am. I'm not even 2 years old at this point. And I climb up the chair and I climb up on the bed, and I learned that her name was Maddie. And I was talking to Maddie and I was brushing Maddie's hair, and she was like, "Oh, I wish that my Henry could hear me." And I said, "Why can't he?" She says, "Oh, because I lost the ability to speak." And I said, "Oh, that's bad." And right about that time, I hear my mom frantically calling my name, and she runs downstairs and asks the butcher to help her find me because she's looked all over her apartment. She can't find me. And he comes upstairs to grab his coat, and that's when he sees me sitting in the bed with his wife brushing her hair. And before he could say anything to me, she said, "Tell him Maddie said, don't be a Richard." I said, "Oh, yes, ma'am." I said, "Maddie says, don't be a Richard." And about that time, my mother walks in the door and is mortified to have heard me talk to an adult in that manner. And she scoops me up, apologizes, brings me back home, and she's scolding me, telling me, "You can't be doing this, 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 and this, and this." And about a few minutes later, there's a knock at the door, and it's the butcher. and he's crying. He's crying. And he's got his arms full of bologna, and back then it was in a big old tube, right? So we had a big old tube of bologna and a couple of steaks and a couple of hot dogs, sausage links, and he gave them to my mother. And he asked if he could borrow me to help talk to his wife. And my mom's like, that's a really odd request, and you can leave the door open. I just want to be able to talk to my wife. And so I go across the hall, and we have conversations for about 10, 15 minutes, and he's crying and she's crying, and they're happy, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go home now. And I go home, and my mom, who is a church organist and a choir director with the Lutheran Church, was like, oh my gosh, that is so special and so wonderful what you did. It's beautiful. Don't ever tell anybody you did that. They'll take you away. I was shocked. I was confused. I'm like, what are you talking about? And she said, Matilda had a stroke and she lost the ability to speak. And there's no way that I should be able to hear what Matilda is saying. And so she called up her mom, who's also ultra-religious, and they had a discussion about me as to whether or not I should be exorcised or we should let this slide underneath the rug. And they decided that we should let this slide, but if I had any future episodes, that they would figure out how to deal with that later. And then my mom got off the phone with my grandmother and told me what I did was very nice, but to never ever let anybody see me do that again, or there would be harm that would come to me. God would be mad at me. People would be mad at me. And I couldn't wrap my head around that. I thought, wow, that is so bizarre. So I kind of smushed those gifts for a hot minute. And the next time I had an awakening was when I was 13 years old. Me and my friends, we lived in Kansas at this time. We would go for jogs out in the country at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning during the summertime, because it is hot in Kansas in the summertime. You don't go anywhere during the day in Kansas in the summertime. You don't do it. So you get out before the sun goes up. So we go jogging. And I always set, these alarms were horrible. They were like loud and blasting. And in my house, if you wanted to get out and go do something, you had to be quiet about it. Or if you woke anybody up, you couldn't go anywhere. So I set my alarm, and I must have hit it. I must have hit the alarm and fell back to sleep for a few more minutes. And then I got the weirdest sensation of floating above my body and going out the door and going through a tree, the leaves, the limbs, and realizing that I was moving the leaves. I'm like, that is so cool. And as I'm doing this and going around, I happen to see my 2 friends that I was supposed to be meeting. And I'm like, oh, I better stop messing around and go hang out with them. So I rushed down there to see them, and they're talking smack about me. And at first I thought, oh yeah, they saw me coming, they're talking smack, telling me I was late, and that's why they didn't wait, and da-da-da, ha-ha-ha. And I go and stand in front of them, and they don't see me. They walk right through me, continuing to talk smack about me. And I got so mad that all of a sudden I felt like this cord yoink me back, and I went the reverse of everywhere I had just been and landed in my body. And I was like, son of a bitch, I am mad. And meet up with my friends later on, and I confronted each one of them. I said, how come you said this? And she's like, why would she tell you that? I'm like, that's rude. And I go over to the other one, and I saw them, and I said, hey, how come you said that? And she goes, I can't believe she told. And I'm like, that is it. And so they believe that the other person told on them to this day, probably. And I never corrected them. But that was when I realized that, okay, we can astral project, we can dream walk, we have the ability to telepathically tune in to somebody else and know what they're thinking, get the idea of what they want. Now, you can argue that there's no way I did those things at that young age, and, well, I don't know what to tell you. It is what it is. It is what it is. I'm the oldest of 27 grandkids on my dad's side, and the oldest of 5 on my mom's side. My mom and dad were both firstborns. So there's a lot of witchy stuff in my life. There's a lot of uber religious stuff in my life. I've gone through catechism. I did those years of studying. I played the flute. I was in the prelude, the postlude, the interlude. If it had a lude to it, me and my sisters were playing. Shannon, my other sister, she plays piano. She played the piano, I'd play the flute, and my baby sister would play the flute. So I feel confident in saying I don't need anybody to switch my religion, right? But let's just acknowledge the fact that before Christianity, goddess worship was a thing by thousands of years and for thousands of years. So don't even come at me. Y'all can go do your thing. While I am metaphysical, woo-woo, fun stuff like this, I also heavily believe in science. Get vaccinated. No need for anybody to be dying of measles or polio in this day and age. That's crazy. Talk to your physician. See a healer, such as myself, psychic and intuit. Get your body scanned, do whatever, but also go get your doctor's appointments. Go get your checkups. When you hit certain ages, get your colonoscopy. Do your breast exam. Go get tested. The sooner you know about something, the sooner you can make lifestyle changes so that you eat better, sleep better, get more exercises, more rest. Whatever it is, the more that you need, right? But we need to be in tune with ourselves. We need to know yourself. That's one of the reasons I like witchy stuff. That's one of the tenets of being a witch, is to know yourself. And that's a constant discovery for me, right? Every time I turn around, I'm learning something new about myself. So that's where I'm going to leave it for today. But, yeah, you have a wonderful day. Be blessed. Bye.